Hello again. I'm glad you could make it to a Toon Boom class. It's not a game. I'll turn the mic down a little bit. I'm trying to mess with trying to find the good sound settings. It's so hard because I can hear myself so loudly in my head, but I'm not like as loud to to the thing. It's fine though. Yeah. But yeah, I'm excited to get started on this. I'll give it a few more minutes before I start, but this this section I like to go over is what I most commonly teach in schools, and like if I'm doing a class, like a master class or a talk. This is kind of like the core of um, my workflow. So, feel better, Zephyr. Yeah, I'm sure chat will behave. Chat's always good. um, but I did learn. I was streaming a video game and I learned how to ban someone myself, so I'm good. But yes, take care, darling. Rest up. And also, hi Meg. Welcome, welcome to my my Toon Boom chat. Is the volume okay? Like, is my talking to my talking voice okay? I have background music too. I felt like it was too loud last time, so I turned it down. Oh, awesome. Clear. Awesome. Whew. I am a streaming professional. Look at me go. Yeah, I've had some audio issues. Like, the reason why it's so hard to tell is my audio was working perfectly until last week. It decided to not go perfectly an hour before I was streaming the first lesson. And I was like, of course, of course. Um, but I got help, and it's working, but like it's not picking up my microphone is being fed through the audio and then picked up, so I can also hear myself talk. You can't hear the slight echo, but I can. So I hear all my mouth sounds, and it's kind of a nightmare, but it's okay. I will persist. Saying persist was terrible. It was terrible. Yeah, almost 40, and being the baby streamer. I do it for the youths, okay? Like putting myself, like, learning this stuff, like, I mean, it's not even a getting older thing necessarily. Like, tech is just garbo, right? Like, it's a very hard experience regardless, but like, I think I had to accept that this is sort of, it's not just like, television is still a thing, but this is still a great way of communicating, and I should take advantage of it in order to, pass the information around. Otherwise, how are we are we're just going to go away. It's just going to leave. It can't stay in my brain meat. It has to, I have to share it with everybody. Oh, okay, cool. And it is time for that exactly. It is time for that exactly. Okay. I actually wrote something down. Last time was a little chaotic. I'm a little I'm a little more prepared, I swear. So just like a few things up front before I start the lesson. So this is a second lesson. There are things I go over in the first, and I'm kind of building on it as I go. Um, the first lesson is actually I'm adding these to a YouTube channel, so you can check my link. You can check my link in the description. Like, I don't know where it is on Twitch. It's there. It's somewhere. I added it to my links. There is a YouTube channel where I will be putting the recordings of these streams. So if you miss one, if you don't understand something, you want to look back on it, check that out. So the first lesson is up, and I will be uploading this one, later on today, tomorrow morning, to it if nothing goes wrong. This stuff is like free. I mean, I'm not teaching anything that's inherently incredibly special. A lot of it, like I see, is just the basics. But, basics are important, and sometimes people explaining things differently can help it click in your head. So, feel free to edit these things, to save them, to pass them around. It's all free. Because I'm just trying to make it a little easier, and Toon Boom's an expensive program. Like, if you're trying to learn it, you are wanting to invest, in your animation journey. So the best thing I can do is try to lighten the ramp up to being able to have fun with the program. I got better in animation after I started having fun. Also, Lyndon Shield, you're welcome. I'm happy. It's rare that I get some time off, so I'm happy I can use it to pass along some knowledge. But yeah, feel free to pass these around. Don't be shy. Edit them all. Save the videos. Upload them. They're all free. With that being said, so one thing I want to explain is my workflow is my workflow. There are some people that have similar workflows to me. This workflow may not be for you, right? Like, everybody works a little bit differently, and there may be teachers or studios that may not want you to use the workflow that I am using. Like, that's totally possible. So I'm not here to say this is the main way to animate with Toon Boom. You should only do it this way. I'm just saying this is how I do it, and you can pick up. Oh, Razor's still not allowed. Consarn. I'll put that on my list. I'm sorry. Thank you so much for trying to raid me again. Oh, my newbie's showing. But yeah, basically, pick up little bits you like, throw out the rest. I'm just trying to, it's the thought process. Yeah. That also means, no worries, dude. It also means that, I'm not the most effective with technology necessarily. I mean, I'm using technology, but I mean, like, I may not have the best shortcuts. I may not have the most effective routes to do certain things. And I 100% don't mind people in the comments going, oh, you could do X, Y, Z. 'Cause, I mean, it's just, yeah. Throw out the tips and tricks. I don't take that personally. But I say this again with the disclaimer of, like, I'm kind of a chaos gremlin. I'm not going to be too effective with this. I'm very old school when it comes to my Toon Boom. Oh, I'm a Toon Boomer. I said that once on social media, and it hurt me, and I'm saying it again. so now you have to hear it. Anyway, this rig here, shout out for this rig. So this rig is the smilez rig, SMI. It's right here. Yeah. If you just Google it, you'll see the Gumroad. It is basically a free rig, but I would, if you have a few bucks, like throw some money, on the Gumroad, because it's a really good rig. It's a really good rig. I recommend it to play around with. Yeah. Okay. And okay. So the other thing too is that I will be not looking at the chat for a while once I got started, but at periodic times I will take breaks for questions before moving forward. So if I don't answer you or anything like that, like no worries. So yeah. Okay. For those of you who maybe weren't here last time or who are new, hi, I'm Meg. My pronouns are she, her. I have worked in animation for about a decade, about more than that, but whatever. But I've primarily worked on Toon Boom Harmony shows up here in Canada. And my method, like I've trained in it, I've taught it, and my methods have stayed pretty similar. I have a lot of very core workflows that help me build on to make, experiment with animation a little bit. I want to fix less of my animation and I want to animate more. So a lot of that comes from some very simple thought processes that are key to my workflow. I struggled a lot with animation when I first started, and it was a lot of little light bulb moments along the way. So this is sort of the accumulation of some of those like tips and tricks. Okay, so we're gonna start with proper posing workflow, and this I would say is the most important thing with getting clean in betweens. If you are someone who tweens and your things explode, it's a posing workflow problem. And I went over this a little bit in the lesson before, but we'll be able to apply these things. I do have basically some rules for proper posing workflow. And we're going to, I have two poses here. I'll just kind of start. I have an example. Excuse me. So we have our starting pose, and and he's gonna bend and just kind of look over the shoulder. Okay. I'll tween it. Okay, so we got a few things going on here. We got the arm going here, spinning. We have what seems to be like it's sliding out and then sliding back in sort of jazz going on. We see the head flipping, we see the foot flipping. Okay, now if this is something you see often, well, don't worry too much about it, because you're gonna get a certain amount of flipping. But the key is that you don't want things that are a surprise. You always want to tween your poses that you're doing, and you always want to analyze your tweens, because they will tell you so much about your posing workflow. And if you're always having to fix like these things sliding up and down, or things spinning, or if you look at your tweens and go, then it would behoove you to invest in a better posing workflow. So I'll go through basically what are my rules. You can always break rules, but these are kind of just, good things to keep in mind. Because, I will show you, sorry, I will show you an example of what it could look like. So this is the one The one on the right here is the one I followed my, quote unquote rules for. And the one on the left is the one that, like, technically isn't bad, but has a little bit more cleanup. Okay, so what do we see here? Well, we see that the arms are tweening way better. They're not, there's some deformer cleanup, but they're not sliding in and out. This one's not flipping. This foot is not flipping. The head is still flipping, but a lot of the times the head flips. You can't avoid a head flip. You kind of could on this character, honestly, because it's a very simple design. You could make your own head rotation. But a lot of the times characters have, like, asymmetrical features. So I want to make, this is going to be an example of how we're going to fix a flip, because sometimes you can't avoid it. The difference is did I choose to flip this because I didn't have a choice? Or is it a surprise? If it's a surprise, you gotta fix it. And fix it now. Fix it in your posing. But, sometimes, things have to flip, and that's fine. So in this case, there is still a flip in my good example, and we will go over how to fix it a little later on. But first, let's talk about the differences between the methods of how I did the posing here. So one, the rig is not the model. Now, this is something that is more of a creative choice, so to speak. We don't always have the luxury in television animation to really go ham with the rig and draw parts and make it super unique, like making your quotas really high. But for these purposes, if you're doing your own thing, if you're working on your own project, if you have the luxury of more time, realizing that the rig is the tool and not the character model can help remind you that, like, the default rotations and spins are just an example of proportion. They are not the personality of the character. They are not the, malleability of the character. They are not the physicality of the character. And you have to make sure, like, as an artist, especially as a character animator, that you are imbuing these poses with your hand. So I just sort of showed you the difference. I drew a little. Oh, move over here. Move over here, friend. Oh, wait. I'm not even on the right tool. C'est moi. There we go. So I would say overall, like, I didn't match the mouth exactly. I ended up tilting the head a little differently. But one thing that, even if I can push this pose further, honestly, I could get nitpicky and push it a lot further. But even just the idea of having a little more of a flow rather than a box and then a leg there and a leg kind of sticking out. It depends on the style that you're going for, obviously. But this is the thing about the artist's hand. I tend to draw like this, so I'm going to make sure that, honestly, if I was revising this is the first thing I would do, is I would make these lines pass through a little more. Again, it depends on how, like, graphic you want it. But that's the other thing. Drawing over poses is incredibly handy, too, to help, go, oh, wow, my hand wouldn't normally do that. Or actually, this center line is right there. These are the things that can help bring your poses to the next level. Now, this is still fine. Like, I mean, I don't find this unappealing. The character is super cute. But you can make it look more like your art, because it becomes your art when you make these intentional choices. Whether other people like them or not is an opinion, but I think as artists, we need to practice our intent. And for me, I find that's how I describe appeal. Appeal is the artist's intent coming through the art. And I love it when, an animator on the team, I'm going to use my friend Erica specifically as an example here. She's a great animator, and she didn't know Toon Boom too well when she first started working on my team. But she would manipulate the model. She would change the face. She would draw over top and yeah, sometimes it went off model when she first started. Sometimes it wasn't quite there, but I would rather her go for it, and then maybe the revision is like, oh, let's put it a little bit more on model, than only just treating the rig like this precious thing where I can't put like a fun taper or, push the line of action if I get too precious with it. Have fun with it, be malleable. It does all depend, like I said, on style and expectation, but if you really want to have more personality in your character animation in Toon Boom, you gotta draw. You whether it be like, this isn't that complex. Like, you don't have to make a perfect special pose all cleaned up, but bring your artist's hand into it. The draftsmanship is always going to be a part of the process. So that's my first rule, is the rig is not the model. Draw the model, think about the character. The second one is start with your large pegs and work your way down. So this is what's happening with the arm. I'm going to turn that off. This arm here that kind of floats off. And take a look at that peg. You see how that peg floats off there? Whoop. And now that peg's messed up, right? Like, what are you gonna do? And the reason why this is happening is because I moved things individually. I took the hand and I moved it here, and I moved this down here, and I moved that there, and, then I moved that up. Don't move things individually. You gotta work from the big pegs down. You do have to rotate it, like a bit of a paper doll. This is fine to start, right? Like, the drawing first doesn't mean you throw every tech out the window and you don't think about efficiency in order to get your pose. In order to work well in harmony, you need to have the hand-drawn appeal, but you cannot sacrifice tween efficiency for just the appeal of a character. At least not with a deadline, And the tweens, your final animation stage, is incredibly important. And if your tweens are full of things flipping and messing up, it doesn't matter how nice your main poses were, because that means you're going to go frame by frame and clean things up by eye, and that's doing way too much work, in my opinion. So make sure you're working from the main pegs down. A lot of times when I pose, I am posing in I'll just kind of post you back there. Like, in a very straightforward, like, rotate you there, and then, or if they were, like, running forward, it's like, move you here, and then maybe they're up in the air, so then I move the body up in the air. Like, the shadow and the body are moving right, then the body is moving up, and then, the legs move this way. And you need to think about, hey, what if I don't rotate? What if I just make a new view? You know, what if I want the foot the other way? I could flip it. Oops. You know, I could flip that so it's facing the other way, or I could just, you know, move this over. There's a patch. It's not hard. You know, you have to be wary of the peg, you know, even using, like, leaving the pivot where it is and changing the deformer. Either way, there's gonna be a cleanup, but we will talk about, you know, certain analysis a little later on. But that's basically the long and short of it. Work with your big pegs down. Don't move things individually. And that's a rule I think most people know, with Toon Boom at least. Third one, move the pose how you would expect it to move. And that includes this sort of spinny arm here. It may look like your arm can just go from here to here, but if you spin it 5 times, the computer's going to remember it. So whenever you see things exploding, the way a lot of people see it is like, oh, stuff's going weird, stuff's going wrong, it's exploding, it's a mistake. It's not a mistake. It's how you inputted the information. It's moving the information how you've inputted it. And one of the best things to do to be a little more confident with Toon Boom and not be intimidated by, you know, cleaning up your in-betweens or things exploding or things like that, or you're wrestling with your in-betweens, is understanding that it's not a mistake. Gain control over your workflow, and it's a world of difference. So move things how you would expect them to move, just like a simple, like, you know, left to right. This is easy to remember when you are learning. It is harder to remember when you are in a panic. So what I find is a lot of people know this stuff because they've been told, like, oh, move it this way, do this, do that. And they're like, oh, yeah, I remember. But, you know, as deadline looms, as people get, you know, a lot of pressure, these are the things that often get thrown out the window. People rush their posing and rush their process, and it leads to messier in-betweens. But what that means is more work on the back end. You know, we want to make sure that we are as clean as possible, even if that means slowing down on your posing, even if that means testing your tweens and correcting those flips. It is a way better investment, and your future self will thank you. Okay. 4, pay attention to what peg you are flipping on and what you expect to flip. So this was what I said before, where if it's surprising you, if you're going, why is that doing that? Then there's a mistake. If you're saying, I on purpose meant to flip this, then you are good. Flips aren't a mistake. Like I said, it's just the way you input information into the computer. And there will always be times when things are going to flip, right? The other thing that's always going to happen is a cell pop, right? Like cells change, which are basically drawings. Cells are not, like, you have to think of cells as individual drawings, yeah, with a peg on them, to move them around. But they, you know, they can only swap from one to the other, right? Again, these aren't mistakes. These are just a function of the program. And we can fix them, but being aware and mitigating it and, like, minimizing the amount is, you know, it's just good up front sort of stuff. Oh yeah, pay attention. So I do have, and I'm just going to double check. So I have the head flipping, and I'm going to go to my, the peg, master peg. So what I'm going to do, I just want to double check to see what peg is flipping. Because there's so many pegs. There's just a ton of pegs. This is actually... Oh, this is the head. This is a very clean rig. Whee! But do you notice how there is a peg that grabs the head outside of the group? And then, is there a peg inside of the head? Yeah. And then there is also a master peg inside. So what that means is there is 2 pegs that can select the whole head. If I'm not paying attention to the node view, right, and I'm just looking at my camera, how do I know what one is which? Well, actually, I do know what one is which because they did add a handy little grabber to tell you. So that you're aware of, you're on the master head peg. Also, for master controllers as well, like this is really common. But, back in the day, you wouldn't have these things. So it would look like, maybe you've selected one peg and you flipped it, but then you've selected another peg and flipped it back. You don't want competing flips on pegs. So I'm going to undo this. Yeah. So if you're not sure what peg the flip is happening on, what you do is, well, you guess. You make an educated guess to start. Okay, during my tween, just the head, well, the head and the neck shadow here is flipping. Okay, so I need to check the pegs that have that. So let's do the first one. The head anim peg right here. So I'm going to make sure that my peg hierarchy is open, which means, yeah, so it's not collapsed, and I can see all the individual pegs. And this one here, the main peg, I'm going to untween it and see what happens. Untween it. Okay, so I've untweened it, but the flip is still happening, which means there's no flip. There's no flip on this peg. So let's go to another peg. So this is the second peg, the master peg within. Let's undo the tween and see what happens. No flip. So now we know the flip is on this peg. When you see flips, it's only happening, like it can look like the whole body is flipping, but it's just a flip happening on a peg or two. Like, look at all these pegs. There's so many, right? This is such a clean rig. All rigs are so different. It's so interesting. But yeah. So that is something to be aware of, is purposeful flips. The 5th rule, and this is one I'm gonna be annoying about because I'm gonna repeat it because this pays off. This is, for me, what I implement in my workflow that pays off. And that's, if you move something on a peg, move everything under that peg a little bit. This is a quality thing, or I shouldn't even say quality. I should say, but like, it does take more time to do in your posing stage. But if you do implement it in your posing stage, it will pay off a little later, because ultimately what I'm trying to do with my poses is not just create an A to B pose. I am trying to create a mini library of peg movement. I don't want things to ever be the same between any of the keyframes. I don't want a line to stick in place. I don't want a line to be perfectly shaped all the time, right? So what that means is between the first and second peg, I want to make sure if there's deformers on stuff, every deformer is shifted a little bit. There's bend in everything. There's adjustment in everything. And this is where, if you're drawing, it's very easy to touch every single thing, because you're conforming every line. Like I changed the shape of the feet, I adjusted this and that. and a bunch of stuff, even the head. So this is another thing we're going to get into, but I will show this example. So what I'm going to take the flip off the head again here, and I'm going to no, go away. And I'm going to take the flip off here. Oops, I did not open up the peg. Open that up. There we go. So on this one, I took the tween off and there is no flip, but there is also no movement. So that means the flip and the up and down movement is both on that peg. But I think I also... I accidentally did not open up that peg as well. Here we go. I'm ruining my supposedly easy example. Okay. So I take off the tween, I take off the flip, and what is under that flip? A lot of times when people are flipping heads, because it gives the illusion of a head turn, they think, oh, I've gone from like 3/4 front to a different 3/4 front. But if you take off that flip, what is underneath that? In this one, while there is face movement underneath it, there is no head movement, ear movement, and there is no like angle change-ish. And in this one, the head flip is gone, but there's also a head angle tilt. Like it's tilting down. The ears are kind of coming forward. The proportions are changing a little bit. So even if you're flipping a head, like generally don't just use a 3/4 front and then flip it to another 3/4 front. Change the angle, change you know, the negative space between things. Keep an eye on the proportions, trying to keep it on model, but you know, do a tilt, do something, put a little taper in. All of these things are going to pay off. And if you do that in your main poses, and when I say main poses, I usually refer to them as like, you know, the extremes of your scene. So in this example, we just have an A to B. So we only have two extremes. You may have 3 or 4 core poses, but always try to identify what poses are the most different from each other. Don't start your scene going, I'm doing posing A, then posing B, then posing C. And we will talk a little bit about like analyzing posing. I think that's a little later. I'm probably getting ahead of myself a little bit. But ultimately, do your biggest contrast poses first. Do your poses that are most different from each other. The ones that do have the rotation, the ones that do have squash and stretch, the things that are most stretched up, most bent over, most happiest, most like the expression change and the squash and stretch in the face. Choose the things that are different to start, because if you can set up those two things to be very, you know, like I said, you touch every, you know, little deformer, you touch every little bit. This ultimately means that every single keyframe you can get later on is going to have, you know, it's kind of from that lineage of investment you've put in. Let me just double check. Move something on the peg, move everything on the peg a little bit. Yeah, okay. And then keyframe everything on the upper peg before tweening. And what that basically means is when I tween, oops, let's close these. Sometimes when we pose, we're not paying attention, like I said, to our workflow. We may get a little messy. So what that means is, I'm just gonna undo tweens here. Before you test out your tweens, or even before moving forward in the next stage, just go ahead and hit down a keyframe on the timeline to make sure that everything, you want keyframes all the way down. You want to make sure it's not, you don't have any gaps. And then from there, you tween. So after you are done your posing, you tween and you analyze before you move forward to another stage of animation. You want to make sure that you are tweening your poses. And if there is anything that is moving in a way counter to how you want it, you're like, oh my gosh, what's happening? What is this? What do? Well, now's the time to fix it. How do we fix it? Well, it means we have to redo the things that, or fix the things that aren't working how we want. So this arm in particular, has a lot of problems. So there is, a pivot point floating away, which is not good. If you see floating pivots and exploding pivots, oh my, that means you're not working from the upper peg down. So this has not just pivots that are sliding in the lower arm, it has pivots that are sliding on this main peg. So what that tells me is I might as well just redo the whole arm. So I'm going to use my center on selection tool. I believe the default is 0 or O. Mine is different, but it's one of those. And center on selection will take you to the peg that you have selected. So I have the upper arm peg selected. It's going to take me to the master arm peg right here. And what I'm going to do is just delete the arm from the second peg. Oops. Oh, turn off the tween. So now what we see is this is how the arm behaves with no peg information. Okay, so which makes sense. It's pegged to the upper part of this body, which is rotating down. And even we do have a cell pop, even though I've erased a keyframe, but that makes sense to me the way my setup is. The drawings are underneath the peg. So the cell changing is a separate thing from removing a keyframe. I just removed a keyframe. But now I can set a keyframe down, for me it's K for keyframe. And I'm going to take this master, it is highlighted here, master arm P. So I know I've grabbed, the one I want. Move it down, then rotate this arm and the hand, and then I will go through the process of, reposing it. And if I'm unsure, tween it. Tween it. Is it working how you want? Cool. Have it tween properly first, then go on top of it and clean up the shapes and taper it and all that kind of stuff. But move it a little janky first. Just do the straightforward like A to B tweening first, and try to keep your workflow clean. So for this one, it seems to be that this forearm is just the culprit. So again, center on selection. The low hand peg, I'm going to, take off the tween. Boop. Delete it. Now it's staying there. And I will move it how it should be moved, which is just up this way. And then, adjusting the hand as needed. Now, I'm doing this really quick, but to give you the idea. But this is the investment you want to put into your posing. You want to make sure that anything that isn't moving how you want gets that correction before moving forward. Because if you don't correct the one pose, you are correcting every in-between between it. And we don't want that. That's what makes it frustrating. So I think that is, and then test your tweens. Keyframe everything and test your, okay, cool. That is the bait. These are the do's and I will. There. My terrible stream. Okay, so these are your do's and don'ts to set yourself up for success. And what is next? Okay, cool. Before I move on, and basically what we're going to be doing next is using my good example, not the bad one, am going to go through the process of fixing a head flip. So we do have a purposeful head flip. We do have a purposeful flip. How do we fix that? So that will be next. But before that, little pause in case anybody wants to ask any questions. And I'm going to drink some water. Okay, no questions. Cool. Which is fine. Also by water, I mean a smoothie that is blue, but also I should get some water. Okay, let's clean this up a little bit and let's start. Wait, no, I want that, please. Tips not having knee pops during walk cycles. Yeah, I think at this point, I would probably need to, like, I wouldn't be able to explain at this point, but there is in my sort of like quote unquote lesson plan, I am going over walks. Specifically a little more with like pegs and how to peg it properly. But I will be going over my method of doing runs and walks. So maybe, hopefully in that one, you will get that answered. But we will have like a specific lesson about walks and stuff in Toon Boom. Yeah, and if you can't make it, or if for those who are here that maybe missed the intro, check my links in my Twitch description where the links are. I have a YouTube channel where I'm going to be uploading these streams. So you can look back on stuff, and, if you miss something, no worries. All right. Now we're gonna get into like the actual animation part. I talk a lot about like pegs and do's and don'ts and understanding all these little things, and it is, don't get me wrong, like it is kind of boring, but it is so important to understand, because when you actually get into the animation part, if you don't know that stuff, you can't actually, it's doing a lot of things by eye, which is fine. Some people have great eyes. I also, when I animate on my own, I'm a little messy and I'm not the most effective, but that also is because I've got a bunch of years of animation under my belt, so my eye has been trained over the years. When you're first starting, though, it is incredibly hard to do things by eye. It is very hard to go like, oh, this thing is flipping weird, or it's working, or it's exploding. I guess I'll just force it, which you do have to do sometimes, but you want to navigate that. So my room smells really nice right now. I got a new candle the other day. It's called Harvest Moon. It's very nice. Okay. So, let's do a head flip. And let's do a head flip without using any sort of master controllers or model sheet, uh, slot in place sort of thing or whatever. We don't. Those things are handy. Don't get me wrong. Those things are handy. And we actually do have like a rotation. But this guy's so simple. Like we don't need it. But it is also reflective of the workflow I have. I generally I don't always use master controllers. So this we're going to be doing a very simple workflow. So if you're using a like a rig that doesn't have all of these views, don't worry. You don't have to be intimidated by rigs that don't have these assets if you will learn how to draw the model. Like I said, the rig is not the model. Just because the rig doesn't have head tilts doesn't mean the character model doesn't have head tilts. You need to learn how to do these things. And actually, I really like characters that don't have really strict model sheets, because then I can go a little ham with them. But let's talk about traditional animation principles and what Toon Boom can and can't do. So I'm going to use this classic example, and I use it all the time, of a more straightforward head flip. This, he's bending down this way. And I went over this a little bit in the last lesson, but this will be easier to display because we're actually on this lesson. So I see this all the time as like, the head flip example where it's like, you have your 3/4 front through your 3/4 front, you arc down, your eyes closed, and and you look. So this is sure, yeah, that's totally fine. But the thing with Toon Boom is, and like I said with certain asymmetrical characters, like if they had anime hair, and it was like that. And it was asymmetrical and you couldn't flip it. What that means is one of these tweens are not going to work, right? You're only going to get it to work from here to here or from here to here. So what do we do to fix the flip? My sort of rule of thumb, and like I said, it's not an all the time thing, but when you are working with poses that are flipping, or you have to do a flip, and I should always also put this in point form, but I will doing it now. Use spacing. I know that's not how you spell spacing, but whatever. Hide flips in spacing. If your character is occupying the exact same, like if I just let's undo the stream. Like if I just had they're looking over their shoulder and I just flipped them and they're just standing in the exact same place. Maybe you just skew over. It's just like this. You're gonna be flexing a head flip with very little space. You have to make it really precise, right? Like, that's hard. That's a hard thing to do. Don't be hard on yourself. Make it easy for yourself. This is why when I think about like, okay, I have to do a head flip, what if they bend down and look over their shoulder? Okay, well now I have an up and down sort of spacing, a really nice contrast in order to hide that head flip. And for a character like this, the head is big, so that's good. But that's really something that you want to do, is you want to use your spacing. And then you want to, and I'm going to say this all the time, find the middle. Because ultimately that's what this is. It's representative of the middle of sort of this, we see it as a default position, but it's sort of representative of like the squash and the contrast and all these things. But ultimately, when I'm saying find the middle, I'm saying find the fastest, F-A-S. I have the messiest writing, I'm so sorry. Or the fastest, Sonic. This is how I draw Sonic. Fast. Find the fastest part of your action. So this is where knowing traditional timing charts, or just understanding what timing you want, and being able to visualize it is very important. So I know that this character bending down, like if I was to draw out, let's smooth this over. If I was to draw out a timing chart, it'd be like, this is the start and this is the end. I'll probably do like that. Maybe stretch it a little bit. But ultimately, I go like, okay, well maybe... Here, let me... Yeah, I could also do the exact middle here if I wanted. Depends on how snappy you want it. Ultimately, though, you want to find what the fastest part is. So if my fastest part is right here, like maybe this is my timing chart. My fastest part is right here. Maybe my timing chart is here, and my fastest part is right here. Find that spot. That's the spot where you are going to fix your flips, basically. You're going to fix the things that you don't like in your tweens, the stuff that you're gonna need to fix up. This is key to understanding a lot of stuff. So while in maybe more, like if you're hand drawing, you can kind of find this middle, like exactly in the middle. For me, the exact middle, you can use it to kind of tween in between, but ultimately what you want to find is this keyframe and this keyframe, more so than that keyframe. Even if I did have this keyframe, you're going to end up with two keyframes representing the middle. And this is because you want to make sure that your tweens are clean. And this is, I'm going to be teaching you a formula. And I think this formula is handy to practice with and to get very clean pose to pose animation. This isn't like, oh, this is the bestest. Obviously, you can do whatever you want. But this, to me, is my formula for just knocking out clean animation, because I want to make sure that anything that is close together does not have things flipping. I want to make sure that this keyframe tweens well with the first one, and I want to make sure this keyframe tweens well with the last one. We're going to talk about offset a little later, how to build on this formula, but for now, we're going to start really simple. So, let's delete that. I'm going to move this over. Now, I want you to keep in mind, this is just a guess. Like, I know roughly what I am going for, but I don't know if I'm going to like it. Like, I don't know. We got to see, right? We got to see. So, I'm just going to extend this so it doesn't pop on and off. There you go. So let's move this. So using this timeline, now stick it on its side. There we go. So I'm going to tween this. Again, I test my tweens. At this point, I know everything is moving how I've expected. I've fixed everything I could. You know, I'm content to move on, you know, whatever. So using like my timeline like a timing chart. So I'm going to move it a little further. I am going to translate this drawing onto the tween here. So I'm going to get this blue circled one, which is probably going to be around there. And then I'm going to find this one. I'm going to do a fairly big jump. The head's pretty big. I think I can have a pretty big jump. And right there. It may not even be that big. Who knows? And then I'm just gonna move them side by side. So this is where I have my base. Okay? What I have right now, what I have achieved ultimately by translating this timing chart onto my timeline, and I've just shoved the keyframes together because I've just grabbed this spacing. It is just my base. My whole thought process is if I'm doing a keyframe, I'm not going to make a new one. I am always going to tween and choose one of my tweens, the spacing of my tween, to be the base of my keyframe. So you don't even need stuff that's too complex. I'm going to be talking about... we're just gonna do cleanup stuff right now. But in later lessons, we're gonna be talking about offsetting body parts, like really showing lead and follow. But for now, we're just gonna talk about having a clean, simple workspace. So right now, I'm gonna flip, I'm actually gonna move this off, between my first frame and this new one that I've made. Now, what are we trying to do? We are trying to make sure that the tweens between these things work. First step, clean up the parts that don't work how you want. So the head is flipping, and we don't want the head to flip here. So center on selection. I'm gonna go to the master peg for the head. I'm going to open it up. So here's the thing. And this is why you need to be aware of your pegs, and you also need to be aware that you're not just like getting rid of all, if you're drawing and you're drawing over your posing, you don't want to accidentally erase that stuff. I could say, oh, okay, well, it's flipping. I'll delete the head. Okay, now I have, okay, it's not flipping anymore, and now I can start to move his head again. It's like, no. You took out too much. You took out too much. The flip was just on one peg, the master peg. Look at all these pegs underneath it. All of that has squash and stretch. All of that has, like, you know, deformer movements, all those sort of things. So you want to make sure you're only erasing the peg that has the flip. So I'm on the master peg, and I'm going to make sure you can't really see it with my little donation tab. I'm going to open it up to make sure I'm not erasing what's underneath. I'm just erasing the information on this singular peg. Like I said, look at how much information's under that. Look at how much information, right? And we don't want to always have to redo faces from scratch. So let's get rid of that. Ooh. So I'm going to erase it. And I'm just going to knock a keyframe in right away. Okay, take a look at this. Now I'm going to flip. And by flip, someone asked me this last time, and I'm like, this is such a good question. I'm going to say... I accidentally say flip in two ways. One is referring to the flip of the asset going like this. But my traditional animator brain also refers to flip as flipping in between what I'm working on. And what I'm doing when you see this kind of like, you know, this like frantic stuff is my eye gauging the negative space in between these poses. But you can see that there is movement. You know, it's not extreme necessarily, But it also means that even if I need to, let's say, the character is going to be rotating their face towards us. So maybe I still have to do a front facing rotation, but I don't have to do a down rotation. I definitely don't have to mess with the deformers as much as if I needed to start from scratch. There's, the DNA from my two original poses still in this face. Just because there's a flip doesn't mean I can't take advantage of all the work that I've done. And I do apologize too if like the camera does get a little frantic. I have weird frantic eyes. The camera goes like my like my eyes go, and my eyes will go around and like nitpick everything. It's yeah. I'm still getting to learn this rig a little bit, but I will say it's been fairly forgiving. I'm gonna level this forward. And sometimes, too, if you go, oh, you want to know something? I actually want to change my first pose so he starts maybe a little more rotated away. At this stage, you don't have to adhere. Well, I mean, if it's a production, it's different adhering to your poses. But a lot of the time when I'm doing my animation, like I'm adjusting whatever I need to adjust at any given time. It doesn't matter if it's like my posing or my keys, because I specifically set up my posing to change. I will do another example of this with the offset body mechanics lesson that will eventually come. But when I pose my characters, yeah, I'm posing them to make keys from later on. I am not posing them to be rigid and be stuck there and never change ever. Because I'm ultimately very lazy. But I'm also, this is the thing, I'm lazy but I'm fast. And a lot of people would say, like, Meg, you're not lazy, you actually overwork and you're a workaholic. And I'm like, yeah, but I'm a lazy workaholic where I don't want to work, but this is also why I go to therapy. all of us ingrain work too much in our self-worth. Okay, I won't nitpick this too much. Okay, so with this one, I'm just gonna copy paste. So a lot of the times when I do this stage, oops, let's go to the arm. Give me your arm. There we go. You can always fix things up. Like, let's say, oh, I want it to be behind the hip still at this point. So I'm going to take the arm and layer it behind, right? It's fine. Like I said, it looks the same. But what I am really going for with this thought process is that the peg information between these small keyframes remains as consistent as possible. And this is incredibly important for settles because really fast animation is easier to make look good because you have speed and dynamicism behind it. But doing something that looks flexible in a settle, that looks alive in a settle and doesn't look like a flat rig, that's hard. That's hard. So in order to really give myself the room I need to achieve that look in a settle, I have to make sure this peg information is consistent. So many times when I go to fix up my keys to make sure it's nice and clean, I don't just fix it up on the frame. I delete it, I stick a keyframe down, and I try to keep it as consistent and clean as possible. Now, okay, you see how even just by moving it down, actually let me go to my first frame. Oh, okay. Maybe it's this arm? There's definitely a layering thing. Let me erase that. Nope. I'm just trying to see what's causing the layering issue. You see how it's popping over top there? Which isn't a big deal, honestly. You can go back. If you are to layer something, you want to understand that, like, layering has a purpose, right? These are all just flat cutouts, either being layered on top of behind each other. So if you do have to layer, you can go, and I know there's probably better methods for this, 100%, but I'm just gonna zoom into side view. And what side view is like you're looking down on your rig. It's just a line, but that line is your rig. It is a piece of paper. A bunch of pieces of paper all kind of slotted together. So you can, if you really zoom in, like, do very small incremental layering. Like, you see how small that is? So small. You do want to make sure, and I'll show you a quick example of this. Honestly, I should have put that in my posing one. I will amend that for next time. But really messing with the layering in in large ways can really mess up your in-betweens. And that's because of the parallaxing effect, because this is a 3D stage. Here's the camera. This little point here is the camera. This is the camera view. And this line here is our character, the rig. And if you take, let's say, something like an arm and you move it towards the camera, like really close here, what that means is this arm is secretly like really, 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 really close to us. And the rest of this dude is really, 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 really far like away. And if we move said character, these things will move at a different rate. So if you see a lot of this, that also means you're messing too much with Z depth. So really make sure your incremental stuff is small. And that's the other stuff too that you fix with this method, be it flip cells or Z depth, mess upperies. This is your chance to fix it before you get to the small tweens. Okay. So I did put a little bit of a layering on it. And then I'm just going to put a little bit of an extra skew. Copy, paste. Copy, paste. Okay. Okay, that's good enough for now. Boop, boop. Now let's do the next one. Between here and here. So I need this keyframe and this keyframe to work. So what's one of the first things is cells. Cells pop in the last frame. Copy. Copy, paste. Just clean up this arm connection a little bit. Copy, paste. And here's the thing. You knock the thing down on the timeline, you get that spacing you want. That's your base. Then your next stage is cleanup. That's what I'm doing now. Cleanup is just cleanup. That is what it is. It's, you're going through, you're adjusting it a little bit. The further you go in your animation, the less cleanup you should have to do. You should be getting faster and faster as you animate. You know, at least for basic animation, at least for like, you know, regular acting. If you're cleaning up a lot in the end stages, definitely workflow. Definitely workflow. Can move that up. Okay. Boop, boop. Let's fix this head. So again, using center on selection, open up that master peg. I'm going to copy while this peg is open, because we don't want it closed. We don't want a closed peg. It's going to erase all the goodness. And copy the peg and paste it here. And again, we see there is a change of the face here and here. The arc of the head turn is not what we want, but that's okay. Okay, now let's fix this. What I'm going to do is move all these keys together. Actually, before that, I'm going to save. Very important. I wouldn't want to have to like redo this if it just crashed. Oh gosh. Oh gosh. Oh geez. All right. By the way, the rest of the lesson will literally just be animating this action. But we're going to get into fleshing it out a little bit more. But first, we make it nice and clean. So the main thing right now is sort of the head. The head action isn't quite working. So we need this. So remember how I adjusted this head? And I kind of rotated it towards the camera a little bit. This keyframe I originally put down earlier. So I'm going to in between the head actually. Because this is the other thing. If I go, this is too close to this, right? Like, even spacing wise isn't that big of a deal. Like, boop, 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 boop. When I flip and I'm analyzing the spacings, oh, hello, cat. Hello. No, girl, your water is not here. You can kind of take a look, because this is the fastest part of my animation. This isn't an arbitrary keyframe. This is just something I'm going on one side is this an ease out, and on the other side is an ease in. We'll talk about antics and overshoots later and fleshing out more keys, but yay, basic pose to pose. So these, you know, this isn't arbitrary. I'm making intentional choices. And I'm looking at the head. I've edited this new one that's like a little more front on. And I'm like, you know, this one is too close to the end. I kind of want, it pops a little bit. So I am just going to in between the head. I'm going to go down to the master peg. Now what I'm going to do is tween it and choose a tween that is closer to this one I have here. 6. This is something like frame 8. Yeah, frame 8. I'm going to pick that. And it's like, but there's a flip. Yeah, it's fine. It's fine. The flip doesn't bother me. The flip doesn't bother me because I'm going to get rid of it in a second. What I really want is everything under that master peg to move how I want, to favor what this looks like. So I'm not thinking of a perfect tween. I'm thinking of a spacing. I'm thinking of I want this to favor what came before. So this favored what came before. Okay, cool. And then I'm just gonna So we have a new head, and then I'm going to, again, using open master peg, copy paste, Okay. This has, between here and here, a little more movement. It's still not where I, want it to be. There's still secondary I need to do. There's still some other cleanup I need to do, but it's got nothing to do with, I'm just giving myself a base. And this is a better base. I like this base better. Cool, 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 cool. Girl, please. My cat had so many beans before I started. I thought she was tucked in, but the answer is no. No, she is. She is not, which is fine. So question, just curious, we'll be learning how to rig in and of itself. I would say no. Not because I don't like teaching it, but there are so many better people to teach rigging than me. Like, I do think if you want to learn how to do rigging, like, I think every animator should have a knowledge of rigging, and I think every rigger should have, like, a decent knowledge of like, animating a rig. But, I would say if you want to learn rigging, usually the go-to place is ZBirdBrain on, YouTube. Let me get the link for you, my friend. There you go. Definitely go there for rigging. So, I mean, like, my rigs are way too casual. Like, I would love to teach, but I struggle. I struggle so much with my own rigs. Okay. Back to doing, okay, so we have the base we want, and now what I'm gonna do is just, do my cleanup, basically. I'm gonna do my cleanup by eye, but you can also, draw over top, flesh it out. Like I said, this is very basic. We're not talking about leading and following. We're not talking about body mechanics. We're just talking about getting from pose A to pose B in a way that is flexible and clean. Because I always tell people, you gotta get your 7 out of 10. You gotta learn how to be boring and clean with harmony than it's messy and full of pain with harmony. Okay, I'm gonna move this over a little bit. Just give them a little more head rotation. This is where I'm gonna start them head drags for the ears. Less rigs that give me room for secondary. Allows me some secondary. This is a good little rig too. Like, if you are looking to make your own rig in Toon Boom, I highly recommend you, like, this is an achievable rig. This is an achievable design. It's a simple t-shirt. There is no details on the elbows. There is, this is kind of like the knee, but, there's no details on the joints, right? And that is so integral for, like, a decent Toon Boom rig. So if you're wanting to get into rigging, start small. Don't start with your cool, very complex character. Don't be like me and trying to do an off-the-shoulder shirt. It's terrible. Don't do that. Don't do that to yourself. Okay. I'm in the work mode now. Aw, my poor kitty is crying. Not for any reason, she just wants attention. Carl, stop screaming. I don't know if people can hear her scream. hear the song of her people. Probably not. I think I just hear a lot more. I don't know. Okay, let's do these ears. Carmen Sandiego is a complex design. Still very good though, like super cool. But like a coat like that, really complex clothes. Like a lot of the few rigs I've made in Toon Boom have something similar to this, where it's like t-shirt jeans. If you're starting off with a rig to start, make a cute little animal with some easy solid color fill. Actually, on that note, I should, as I'm doing this, sort of plug that I am raising money for Extra Life this year. We've started early. And basically, I'm doing this stuff for anyone, but if you have a couple of bucks, I think I can do this. I think, it's so hard. It's so hard to do mod things. Is this it? Yes. Okay, cool. I put the chat thing. No pressure though. No pressure. I do, it's for everyone, but this is the stuff we're doing. I do have some goals though. If we hit a certain point, I do want to make a rig that if I hit some of my donation goals, I think I have 2 rigs planned. One is like a little animal rig, but I do want to make like a shoulders up complex face rig for those who just want to practice complex lip sync. Something that is meant to have basically like no mouth cells, just deformers on the mouth. I really like rigs like that. So I may make one of those, which I think would be fun. Because that is also something I will be going over in later lessons, is how to sort of make your keys a little more like quote unquote traditional in really bringing your lip sync not as a pass when your animation is done, but like really push the personality lip sync and the flexibility of the face and all that kind of stuff. So, okay. Dun, dun, bum, bum. So here we have our fixed keys. No, actually I take that back, because his head is sticking here. Gonna change this last pose. Oop, oop. Okay. And there's some other stuff. So his eyes are open here, but I think I want the eyes to open on the saddle, so I'm cool with leaving them closed. Here, we will give the eyes a little offset, but we want the mouth to be the cell we want. So copy paste. Wow. Here we go. Boop, boop, boop. So, just to double check, before I go any further, I'm going to tween in between my first frame, which was this one here, and the blue keyframe I circled. And it looks like it works good, except for the fact that this pops forward, which makes sense because that's basically what I've done. I've popped that forward. So that makes sense to me. No surprises, which is perfect. Any surprises here? No surprises here. except, there's a lot of change in shape of the eyes, but we know that. The feet do slide a little bit, but I'm not going to get too nitpicky on that. I'll be here forever if I'm as nitpicky as I normally am on this stuff. Okay, so it's time for us to pick the rest of our in-betweens. Keys, really. But we're going to keep this simple, where we're going to find... Basically, you want to work your way back, right? So, color. There we go. So we found this one here, and we have this one here. So now we're going to find that one there. I'm going to tween it and choose something that favors my first frame. Okay. Now, obviously, I do have this pop, but what do? I copy paste what I want it to favor. And I want it to favor the first frame, copy, paste, and then I will move it out a little bit just to help the rotation. Okay. Which means if I fix that and I'm copying and pasting it, if I wanted another in between, like let's say I wanted another one here, I can do that. And now these two here will in between properly. So a lot of times when I'm doing my settles and my animation, I'm not just fixing one pose, tweening it, and then fixing all the different tweens. I'm going sort of in order of importance, even with a simple ease in and ease out. So we have basically we have the ease out. So I'm just going to move that on the timeline. So, because what we've gotten ultimately is our spacing. Like, look, you got frame 1, we got this one, and it starts to turn. So we have the spacing we want, but we haven't moved it on the timeline in a way that reflects what we want. So I am going to keep it on. I am going to keep it on 2s. We're going to move this over. Okay. Then we have our middle. So right now we have this one, this one, this one, this one, and now we need to tween them. Well, I should do a better settle so it's a little clearer. This is why you get, the halves. Boop, 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 half, half, half. But ultimately what we're trying to do is make sure this settles nicely, which we basically know. So what is the next thing we're gonna get? Like, we could, using our timeline like a timing chart, we don't have anything to necessarily fix. So we could, if we needed 3 in-betweens, we could go 1, 2, 3. That's going to move them on 2s. And do something like that. Ooh. You see how we still have secret flip in the timeline. So just for those of you who aren't sure, as I went through, you see how the head just vanished. And this is ultimately what Toon Boom is doing. It didn't disappear, but it is flipping, and it's perfectly in the middle. And so what you're ultimately looking at is a flat piece of paper that's so thin you can't see it. That's what's happening here if I move this out. Now, it's not keyframed. You don't see tweens necessarily when the timeline is collapsed. So what you can do is, as long as it is collapsed, you can just undo your keyframe, and it should undo any keyframes underneath. There you go. Boop. Oh, girl, please do not shut down my computer. Please, please, please no. Please no. So right now we have a very clean pose to pose kind of thing. We'll talk about secondary in a second. Obviously, he's just kind of floating to the ground. But understanding this sort of straightforward way to fix. I'm gonna stop. You know, there's obviously some merging. What this is an example of a more technically clean workflow. We have not fleshed out keys to show weight. We have not fleshed out keys to show secondary, to show overlap or follow through. But even just understanding how to get to this point in a clean and flexible fashion where things aren't popping, right? Like, you can get into the idea of offset and like improving stuff, but technically it's you know, it's easy to work with. And if you ever want to adjust the timing on it, you're in control of, like, you're aware how like where that flip happened. We know where the flips happen. They happen during the largest part. That's why we started with the middle, because if you can make that middle work, if you can make, for what is us, frame 5 and frame 7, all of the mess ups are between here and here. Everything that flips the head, or, you know, the hand pop, is between here and here. And so it is the largest spacing, and everything is smaller. So if you want to adjust something, you adjust it. You can just take out your settle. Taking out 5 frames of settle is way less intimidating when you know you don't have to fix up flips or fix up, you know, you go, oh, it's just, I just fix up this one circled in blue. I just fix up that main one, and that will help keep my tweens clean, ultimately. I am actually going to get a refill on an actual water, because I've been talking for a bit. So I'm going to put this on a quick mute, get some water, also tuck my cat in so she doesn't bother me. But please put any questions in the chat. We'll take another quick break before I go over basically this again. I'm going to erase the settles, and we're going to go back to the two, you know, just the middle part. But I'm going to go through how I can get antics and overshoots with my poses. So that's coming up next. Be back in about like five minutes. And like I said, any questions in the chat, and I will answer them when I get back. All right, I'm back. Okay. What is next? Okay, so that, what I went over, just the clean head flip, understanding the concepts. Now, let's go into fleshing out this a little more in something that maybe you, like a supervisor or a teacher, would sort of want to see. Because from a animation standpoint, from a Toon Boom standpoint, this is a clean workflow, right? Like, and doing well in Toon Boom and doing well in the studio doesn't just mean being a good animator. It means being, like, understanding the program, because you don't want to use it in a way that's going to, like, mess up other people. So being able to balance your artistic intent with having a clean workflow just makes you, you know, a good part of the team, right? Like, you don't want to just have, like, you work, like, okay, it's messy or it's cool, but, you know, everyone has to, like, go into your scene and fix it up, and the compositors are losing their mind because your workflow is wild. And this is why I said, like, even my workflow isn't, you, if someone asks you not to animate the way I'm doing, you know, you should listen, because there's probably a reason for it. You can always ask the reason. But this is what I would say is what you want to achieve first before thinking of being creative. Because you have to be clean with your workflow first before you can be creative on top of it. If you do it the other way around, like, not to say you shouldn't have creativity with Toon Boom, you absolutely should. But you have to pair it with the knowledge of the program. Otherwise, you're going to tear your hair out. It's not going to be fun. It's not going to be fun to animate. You may survive a few things, but you're not going to survive long-term. Cat, is that where you were? I was looking for you. Come here. Come here. No. Bye. Please don't turn off my computer. Child of mine. There. You good? Sorry, my child. Yes, I will be working on Wednesday and streaming on Wednesday, so I will definitely be able to take questions then too. So yeah, this is good and clear and clean and nice. But let's talk about fleshing it out a little more than that. So I'm just gonna erase some of this stuff. We are going to erase this. I'm going to save so I do not forget. I don't have autosave on, which is good for me, but also it means I have to pay attention. Okay, we're gonna go back to the classic head turn. Oh, I should really do it the other way. So we're gonna have the character do this, and then antic up a little bit before they turn. I'll go down, and then they're going to, you know, squash down and settle up. You know, we're gonna do a classic whoop, antic overshoot settle. Who doesn't love a good antic overshoot settle? It's by far the easiest example for me to do. I'm gonna go back to this too. So we have currently, let me end start. This is a little example of what we want. What we have is our start. We have our end. We do have like we have this one basically as well. We have this one that is based though off of that and that. It does not have any relationship to what we're going to be making next. If I was to make something from scratch, like if I was to go, okay, so we have the start of the turn here, right? But now we need to like move up before the start of the turn. Okay, so let's move them up. Let's, stretch. So you see what I'm doing by like I'm making my new keyframe, right? I'm making another keyframe. Don't do this. Well, you can. Sometimes you need to. But I will always use my tweens to get a base. And this comes back to, again, if you touch something on a peg, you have to touch everything underneath it. I invest a lot in my poses. I don't want to have to craft keyframes, especially if, I'm really tight. So, like on deadline and stuff like that. So what we're going to do is I'm going to erase that. And I'm still going to use this in between. You don't have to. But any sort of new keyframe I'm doing, especially one that is based, like we're going to get the overshoot, the antic, and we're going to get the overshoot. It's ultimately still related to the poses I have, the first and the last, right? I want to retain that intent. So I am going to in between this and the start of the turn, but kind of favor the first one. Like right here. Right there. I have this and this. Cool. And again, I'm going to copy, paste. Copy, paste. I want to make sure the information is the same. How do I get overshoots? I will be showing you how to do that. So even from the artist intent, yes, antics and overshoot are different from your keys. But in the sense of Toon Boom, in order for me to get my keys, the first thing I do is I use my tweens. I think of what is the spacing of my antic or my overshoot in comparison to the frame, it's favored. So if I take a look at this, now this character is moving down, right? That's not an antic. But I'm just going to copy the first frame, move the keyframe that I just had, and then paste it back in. So I swap them. I turn them around. I do a swapsy. Because these are so similar, this might as well be the first pose. I'm not looking to find my final keyframe from the tweens. I am looking to find a base in which to build my final keyframe from the tweens. Because what that does is if you are really adjusting the face, if you're adding a lot of deformer movement, if you are adding a lot of stuff, you don't want to erase that. And because like these have tapers in them, you know what I mean? Like if I copy and paste, or if I, I don't want to have to go through the whole thing and fuss with everything again. But that doesn't mean this is final. Like I said, it is just a base. And for me personally, I need my eye to see something to flip in between. So this is our start pose, antic up, and then down. But you see how like he's anticing like back this way? When I sort of want to antic like here, it goes up and then down again. I don't want him to antic back. But But this is where we adjust. And this is where you start to build your keyframes. We got here, here. So now we're changing the acting. So, but I always take a look. I'm like, ooh, okay, well, I've already done an eye pose, so let's copy and paste an eye pose. This is why I always start with my streams. You can also reset the poses. And you can push your spacing a lot more too. Like, let's say we want the antic like really, really big. And do you see how I'm like squashing and stretching on the upper peg and stuff? It works, and you don't want to go hog wild with it, but because there's already sort of a subtle movement, the whole movement isn't, you know, relying on one peg. It's relying on little movements from all of them. I think what I'm going to do too is I'm going to have his shoulders skew down. So where you put the pivot point, it's temporary. So if I select the arm, when I skew stuff, I try to be mindful of what's connected, where I want something connected. So with this, I'm going to move the pivot up here and skew it up. Oh wait, no, I want to skew it down. I want to skew it down. And skew this up. Looks a little silly right now with the mouth, but I don't care right now. Work rough, you can clean up later. Working rough is not a bad thing, as long as you work rough in a proper way, like we went through with like the posing do's and don'ts. You know, it's understanding what pegs you're on, it's understanding like not to move things in a way you don't expect it to move. So a lot of the times when I'm unsure of like what I want to do, yeah, I move stuff around quite a bit, and I'm not like super perfectionistic with it, because, you know, who's got time for that? Especially now. Our time is precious. And you see I'm still changing this pose quite a bit. Like, it's gonna end up pretty differently than what I had on the keyframe, right? And I think that's, you know, important to point out the differences. I really want to use tweens to my advantage. I want them to give me a base in which to work. Because I still need to know the model, I still need to draw the characters, I need to know the personalities, but Toon Boom's still there to help me. Like, rigs are still really great. They still help you keep things on model. They can help you rough things out. Like, your artist eye will be the refinement. But giving yourself a base to start on and not completely doing things from scratch over and over and over again, allowing your eye to see a little bit of movement even though you're going to be building something on top of it, it really does help you keep things on model. And like at this point now, I'm not even paying attention to the face. Like it may seem kind of silly, but I'm just looking at the ears and the shape of this face here. And, you know, now I'll go in and adjust the face a little bit. But sometimes when I work, it looks a little silly. But that's because I'm not afraid of things looking weird, because I know this is just cleanup, right? All the pegs work. There's nothing flipping. There's nothing I need to clean up. There's just put it on model. Make the faces a little better. Make it a little cuter. Honestly, I also split up the mouth. Oh, like their mouth is actually like one piece. I did split it up a little bit. But that's because I'm a sucker for mouths that are just like a little bit more split up. I like to really morph my mouth around. I'm just gonna do a little, just something simple, just so we can move forward. Okay. So I'm going to, so now you have the antic. Now you see this head no longer works, right? This original in between we had no longer works. But yeah, that's fine. It was also a different cell. Let me just, where is it? Where is that cell? Hello. There we go. So this is the antic. This was our in-between before. So what I'm going to do, because I'm not going to use this in-between. This was an old one. We have an antic now. We want to make sure that this stretched pose, this little boop, is retained in this pose. This is no longer an in-between. It's not related to the one before. But that doesn't mean we can't tween with it. Oftentimes I will set up a pose, and it's the same for like, you know, middle positions, or, you know, yeah, like if you have a master controller or like a pose copy or something like that. I'm just going to go to the upper body. I don't really need to tween the lower body. It's just the legs bending. Let's go into the upper body though. Come here, you. So I'm going to be tweening between this pose and this one here. I'm just going to change the color so you see. Here we go. So frame 9, oh, no, other way around. Frame 4 is my antic. Oh, we do have a little bit of a, gotta raise the shoulders a little bit more, my friend. There we go. So we're going to tween between frame 4 and frame 9, only on the upper body master, though. So I'm going to tween it, and I'm going to choose something that favors the antic pose. But first I'm actually going to rotate this out a little bit. And I'm going to move the ears, because I like the ear shape. I need that ear shape. But the ears aren't in the right position. So I'm going to quickly adjust this. Give it a different tilt. It doesn't even have to be perfect, because ultimately I'm not gonna keep it. I mean, that does work pretty well, though. Not gonna lie. NGL, Niglai, not gonna lie. Okay, that's a little too squashed, though. Boop. Okay. Now I'm gonna tween it, and choose something here. Let's choose this. Okay. That was our old keyframe, and we don't need it. So we ultimately had to adjust this one here to work with that one a little bit. So, dun, dun, dun. Gonna move the timing out a little bit because we're doing a whole other action now. We're not just doing pose to pose, like we're fleshing things out. So we have the antic and then the start of the turn, the second part of our fastest part of the action, and then down. Okay, so how is about our overshoot where the character like absorbs their weight and then settles up? So again, we look at our extremes. Right now, our extreme down is our last pose. We can tween it, choose something that, I'm not going to choose something really close to this. I'm going to choose, well, yeah, maybe around here, And I'm going to copy something on the tween. And I'm looking at the spacing here, right? Boop, boop. So I'm going to choose here, copy, and I'm going to paste it on the other side of my last frame. So now my original pose is now the extreme down, and the character settles up a little bit. Now, the ears are weird. That's fine. We're still cleaning up. It's just a base. So this overshoot, this weight overshoot, I'm going to squash it down even more. I'm going to do it fairly quick. Just because it has been 2 hours and I don't want to spend we're getting to the end of it. I just want to flesh out this a little more. And we will be going into it, like we will be compounding on this also next lesson. But this will give you the basics of it, and then we're really going to be offsetting limbs and body mechanics and follow through. But even knowing how to make basic keys off of the poses you've already invested in, it's great. I'm going to copy and paste these EOs. Copy, paste. I mean, a lot of this is just like swapping and re-in-betweening things. Boop, boop, boop. I can even take these eyes that are like, you know, maybe they're a little more squashed. I can copy them. Go on the frame before. Oop. Like I can put them on the frame before and then on the frame after, they open up a little wider. You know, it's, you can figure out how you want to offset things a little bit. Doot. Make a lot of doot noises. So the character is going here, and then it's gonna put a little skew. Maybe not that much. Maybe not that much. It's fine. It's fine. Okay, so we have, I shouldn't have done that. Now we have our antic. We have the fastest part of the action where the character comes down, and we have that area that's got the flip in it. And now we have an overshoot down and a settle up. Oh, let me adjust the mouth because it gets really big. We'll keep it small. And from here, we can maybe adjust the timing a little bit, see what you want to do. But we got this, and this is the thing, like, you know, you can nitpick as you want, you can adjust things as you want, like, as your preference as an animator. But how we got to this point with understanding pegs and understanding, like, look at all these in-betweens that aren't as, like, besides this little bit, you know, popping up, these in-betweens are really, these are good and clean. That's what you want. Because now we can flesh these out even more. Like, we have a body overshooting down, but we don't have a separate key of arms offshooting down, right? Like, what if? And we will be going over this, like, it's actually kind of cool that each one of, like, the end of one lesson kind of overlaps into the next one. But if everything is offset, like, let's say I'm gonna do this. So, you know, you're settling into your position, right? Here's your end position, and your antic is here, or not antic. Your overshoot is here. So what that means is, like, your body is overshooting down. But if your hands are following through, when are your hands going to overshoot? Well, they're going to overshoot maybe right here or right here. We don't know yet, but let's say for argument's sake, this is where we get into, again, offsetting body mechanics. We want the hands to overshoot here. Okay, well, I have this frame and I have this last frame. So what's the next important frame for me to do? Well, maybe it's this one. So what I'm going to do is, so here's my overshoot, and I want to choose something that is favoring my last keyframe, but gives me enough room for a frame in the middle. Right? So it's got to be pretty favored. So I'm going to choose something here. Yeah. You got to go pretty close to it. And then I'm going to move it on the timeline so I have room for one area on twos here. And then in this frame, well, actually, this is the thing, right? It doesn't matter what frame you do the fix on. What matters is that on frame 25, these hands are going to overshoot down a little bit. And heck, the ears too. We're just going to put a little skew. We're not going to, you know, deform stuff too much. We're going to keep it simple. And then you can flip between that one and the last frame, and we're just going to make sure that these things settle up properly. to move this out. Okay. And now we can see that little offshoot in the hands and in the ears. And it's pretty easy to fill in the in-betweens. Boop, boop. And then I'm gonna pick out 1, 2 that favor the end. So that's a little bit of like, you know, the in-betweens at the end there. Oh, and also let's get something between here and here. I'm gonna choose something that eases out. I kind of want the timing to be like here, and then an ease out, boop, 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 and then down. I mean, I don't actually even need an ease out, but let's see. Then I want something that favors the top, but not a ton. That there, and I'll have 1 frame of these out. Okay. So this is me filling in my in-betweens. I had my keys. I didn't draw out a timing chart. I did a lot of it in my head, but I mostly just, you know, picked out the in-betweens I wanted. So let's take a look. That time, you know, it's very even timing. I would almost want to like make I mean, this is an antic, but it's also a reaction. I think that's kind of messing it up because I want the reaction to be a singular beat, like pause on it, like, oh, they stop and then they turn. But whatever, that's fine. And then you can, this is me being picky. You can also, this may have been the top of the arc, but let's take it out and see what it looks like. Okay, I actually like that better. It does slow down a lot. You can see the spacing. Even though I found the fastest part of the spacing, I've added too many in-betweens that it's slowing it down. So this is where you get to play with your timing, right? Like you found the spacing you want. And again, if you make an effort to understand where you have put the flip, fixing these things isn't that big of a deal. They all contain the time you've put in. So what I'm gonna do is here, it's this one here. Like these two are way too close together, and then it pops to here. So I'm gonna take one of those out. Here. Okay, that sticks way less. I also feel like I want to put some, let's see what it looks like on ones. Okay, I like that better. I think it's because of, okay. So this is where I start to like play around on like the timing of it, where I go, okay, these two here are too close together, so I want to take that out, but that's too much of a pop. So what I'm going to do, and I do this all the time, I'm going to tween And I'm going to get a keyframe on either side of this one. I'm going to do one there, and I'm going to do one here, and then I'm going to delete this. Yeah, I like that timing better. Let's try this. And then I want a longer settle because I made it a little bit faster. So I want, I don't want a 2-frame settle-ish. I sort of want a 3-frame settle. Make it a little less subtle. And what I'm doing on the timeline, honestly, is I'm using the plus and minus to like shift the keyframes around instead of dragging it with on the timeline. So here we go. So here is what I would say for now, for all intents and purposes, the finished animation. You know, I may have some nitpicks about, you know, how I want to adjust it, but I know it is clean. I have tweaked some of the timing. I've put some on ones. I know if I hand this into someone and they go, hey, it's just, can you like make it go a little, like maybe more hang time at the top of the antic before you go down? You can go, oh yeah, that's no problem, because I know all my in-betweens into my antic and all my in-betweens out are gonna work. And this whole like find the middle sort of thing where let's go back to this. Here. What if the character didn't turn their head coming down off of the antic? What if they turned their head on the antic? So they reacted, but as they were going up to turn, their head turned first. So how do we fix that? Well, the same way we did if it's in any part of the motion. Fastest part of the action. What that means is if it's an antic, if it's like more of a breakdown keyframes, you may not have a middle that is made up of, you know, a lot of different in-betweens. What if, let's say, you only have like an ease out and an ease in, right? Well, where's your middle? Or like, what if it's like, you know, an ease out and then here, here, and then they turn, right? And the head turn is in between this part, right? Then you have to find this keyframe, blue or green. This keyframe, you need to find this keyframe. Even though there's no in-betweens between these things, and you're like, I mean, if there's no in-betweens, it doesn't matter if things flip. But you as the animator know that I have to use my largest part of the spacing to fix the flip. So this concept that I've gone over in this video, even though like I have used a head flip in this particular action as an example, you can apply that to anything. You can apply that to anything. And sometimes flips are a pain in the butt. But a lot of times they're only a pain in the butt if A, you don't have the spacing for them and you don't understand how to fix it necessarily. But you need to have the spacing, and you need to understand animation principles and spacing and timing. It is fastest part of the action and it is the largest spacing. Hide all your garbo in there, you know, whatever broken stuff you have in the rig to get from pose to pose, like pose A to pose B, that's where you hide it. You hide that garbage in the fastest part of the action. And that was ultimately the main concept of this, because you can build on this. If you can do a clean head flip like this, even if it's like a little tweeny, if it's like a little stiff or whatever, but you don't have anything exploding, that's what you want. That's absolutely it. That's a good goal to get to. Until you get to this part, you're going to have a hard time. Like you're going to hit a point with your animation where it's going to be good, but your workflow will always be slow. So I do encourage you that if your workflow is not clean, really honing in on that is going to help you a lot with your animation journey. And with that, I think I said I would stream like, you know, 1 to whenever. I think it was 1 to 4, 1 to 3. I forget. Anyway, but it has been a long lesson. It's been about 2 hours and 20 minutes. Oh my gosh, I just realized I did not record. It's fine. Twitch records it. I can record the Twitch download. It's fine. It's okay. So many things. Thank you so much, everyone, for coming. Oh, I didn't mean to scare you. I'm so sorry. But thank you everyone so much for coming. I hope you learned some things that will help you through figuring out Toon Boom. I hope it can make things a little more fun. Keep an eye out on the YouTube channel for this recording to come out. It's one of those things that takes some practice. It's not a one and done thing. Like I said, this is my workflow. It's ingrained in me. But definitely worth practicing if you get frustrated with Toon Boom. So I still need to set up rates too. I'm definitely going to do that for next time. I promise. Thank you so much. Have a good rest of your day, everyone, and I hope to talk to you all later. Farewell.